BBC News with Sue Montgomery. Police in Haiti say the remaining 12 missionaries held by an armed gang since October have been released. 5 others from the US and Canada were released previously. They were abducted 2 months ago after they visited an orphanage in an area east of the capital, Port-au-Prince. Will Grant is following the story.
They've been held for 2 months, so that's 2 months' worth of pretty fervent negotiations. At one point, reaching the point where the gang, 400 Massawa, had requested $1 million per hostage, which is a total of $17 million that they were wanting to see these hostages released. Several were released before this date. Now we've seen the remaining 12, and the missionary back in Ohio, where they're based, has celebrated, saying, their prayers are with those who've been released, and they're celebrating the fact that they're out.
Britain has again registered a sharp rise in new coronavirus infections. At 88,000, it's its worst figure since the pandemic began, for the second day in a row. It follows warnings on Wednesday about the spread of the highly infectious Omicron strain. Professor Rupert Pearce is a consultant in intensive care at the Royal London Hospital.
We're not in a brilliant situation, but we are extremely now, sadly, used to reconfiguring our services to provide more ICU beds. We've got lots of drugs available to us to treat patients much more effectively. We've got supplies of ventilators sitting, waiting to be used. And we've got strategies for how we redeploy staff into intensive care should that capacity be needed as well.
The rapid rise in coronavirus cases in Britain is impacting the sports calendar, with the English Premier League being forced to postpone a number of games after outbreaks at clubs. While there have been calls for the league to take a break completely, the head of European football's governing body, UEFA, Alexander Ceferin, urged all players to get vaccinated.
I believe in science and I got vaccinated. I think that they should get vaccinated as soon as possible, but I still believe for now it's a personal choice. And we have to be smart, we have to explain things, why vaccination is good.
The defence in the sex abuse trial of Ghislaine Maxwell in New York has called its first witness, a former assistant to the British socialite, accused of helping the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein groom his victims. Kimberly Espinoza described her former boss as fair and nice to her, even though demanding. She said she was aware of the crimes Maxwell had been accused of, but said she never saw Maxwell or Epstein engage in inappropriate conduct with underage girls. 4 women testified that Miss Maxwell facilitated sexual contact or abuse by Mr. Epstein. She's denied the claims. World News from the BBC. At the end of a summit of European leaders, the European Council has stressed the urgent need for Russia to de-escalate tensions caused by the military build-up along its border with Ukraine. The Council warned any further military aggression against Ukraine would have massive consequences and severe costs. It reiterated its full support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Scientists estimate that last year's catastrophic wildfires in the world's largest tropical wetland, the Pantanal in South America, killed as many as 17 million animals. The fires that burned between January and November last year destroyed about a third of the wetland area. A deal between Israel and the UAE to transport oil from the Gulf to Europe by way of an Israeli port appears close to being cancelled after Israel's Environmental Protection Ministry blocked the entry of oil tankers into the Gulf of Eilat. Environmental concerns have been raised with regard to a coral reef in Eilat. Scientists in Australia have discovered the first true millipede with more legs than any other known animal. It's pale-coloured and all legs fit in a body barely 10 centimetres long. Here's Danny Eberhard.
Finally, a millipede that lives up to its name. No longer is it a misnomer. Well, if you substitute legs for feet. This is the first of the species that has 1,000 legs. Previously, the record was 750. This millipede racks up an impressive 13 legs a millimetre. It's unsurprising it's taken a while to discover. It was found 60 metres underground in a mining region of Western Australia. Hence its name, Eumillipes Persephone, a reference to the queen of the underworld of Greek myth. It can run, but it couldn't hide.
BBC News.